Okay, I think we're running and rolling. Okay, this is episode 74, always getting better. So this is actually just going to be me. I did have somebody booked in for the week, and I got sick, so I had to cancel the interview. I thought I'd actually just jump on and do one on my own because there's some things I'd like to talk about. Today's topic is why I don't teach songs to my beginner students anymore. And this all started. I had guitar lessons with a guy called Martin Goulding. I've spoken about Martin many times on this show, and he is the only guitar teacher that has raised my technique in a matter of, I think I'd say it was weeks, like beyond, like almost immeasurably. An absolutely amazing teacher, stunning player, and I was having lessons with him for about, let's say, 2 or 3 months, and I said to him, I'd really like to have a go at learning this Megadeth solo. And he kind of looked at me, shook his head, he went, yeah, okay. I went, yeah, cool. And he went, all right, so can we have a look at it? And he went, no. And I was like, what, why? He said, I don't teach you repertoire. If you want to learn that song, go off and go and learn it. You're a grown up. You don't need me to do that. Go and learn it. I teach you. I work on your technique. I work on your timing. I work on your legato, your picking, your sweeping, all of that stuff. I do all of that stuff. And it really got me thinking. I was like, that's really interesting. And so I then started to implement it on one of my students. I used them as a bit of a guinea pig, and I decided to stop teaching this student songs and focus in on the things that he was really struggling with. And the things that he was struggling with was playing in time, keeping a steady rhythm, really like feeling the groove. And I hyper focused in on that, so much so that 30-minute lessons were dedicated just to him playing a G chord and tapping his foot and seeing if he could get the whole thing to sync up. And he couldn't do it by the end of the first lesson. He was struggling by the end of the second lesson, the second week. But after about a month, and this, like I said, this is someone who would struggle with just staying in time. But after about a month, I started to see these just massive improvements. And I thought, maybe I'm onto something here. Maybe I'm onto something. Now, I'll say this, that when somebody comes in for their first guitar lesson, of course, we're learning songs. I've got 4 or 5 songs that I take all of my absolute beginner students through, and I make sure that they can play all 4 of those songs competently, like to the point where I would say I would have them perform that to somebody. After that, and we're learning charts as well. I write out all of these songs. They're written out in as much musical detail as I think that they can handle. The charts are written out. Everything's divided into bars. We have repeat dots. We have first and second repeats if they're required. We have A section, B section, C section if the song needs it. And I have them sight read, through this song. I'll often go back to songs as well to make sure that they can actually read it. They're not just doing it all from memory. And when they can do that, and they're able to play through the songs, they're reading the charts, everything's feeling good, the timing is good. Well, the timing doesn't have to be that good, because that's what I'm going to then hyper focus in on. But as long as they can read through the charts and they hear the changes, they can listen to the song, they can pick out the different sections, the verses, the choruses, the bridges, all of that kind of stuff. Then what I do is I give them a song. I'll have them pick a song. It's like, what song would you want to do next? And again, I've spoken to this effect many times on the show, that most students don't have favorite bands, favorite songs. But if they choose a song, I'll say, right, this is the song that you've picked. This is what I want you to do. You're going to go off on your own. You can use YouTube, you can use Instagram, you can Google it, you can do whatever you want, but you're going to learn this song as best as you can on your own. You can use YouTube. There's loads of great teachers out there. And rather than me try and fight against all of those YouTube teachers, like Justin and Andy and Marty Schwartz and all those people, I'm using that as a tool for their learning. So I'm encouraging them to go out, YouTube it, Google it, try and figure it out, maybe even write a chart out for it and see how you get on your own. And then what I can do is I can then focus more on musicianship. So I can focus on things like timing, feel, ear training, making sure that when they're playing, they can tap their foot or they're moving their body, because all of these things are I think, woefully overlooked by teachers. It certainly isn't taught a lot in spaces like YouTube and Instagram, because, selling, this is how you play this song, is obviously going to sell. It's going to sell more tickets. It's going to get more clicks. It's going to get more views. Of course it is. Now, I don't know. I can't speak to private lessons and people who do lessons at schools, but I have covered many teachers in my area. And when I look through the book that their previous teacher has written out for them, there's nothing in the way of, all those things that I talked about: time, ear training, foot tapping, chart writing. Like, the teacher hasn't written charts out. It's just little scribbles. And I feel that there's that is an area that really needs to be looked at, particularly things like ear training, particularly things like chart reading, and being able to play in time, even tuning your guitar, man. I've had new students, like, if they come through from primary school into secondary school, and I'll say, just tune your guitar, and I'll put my app on, or if they've got it, they can turn their app on, and they struggle. They're struggling to tune it. It's like, well, these are just like the basics that are being overlooked in favor of being able to play songs and being able to play riffs. Of course, being able to play songs and being able to play riffs is largely why most of us pick up the guitar, but it's still only one part of being a musician. And so things like chart reading, tuning your guitar, being able to play in time, I think are things that are overlooked. And I think that if you can't play in tune and you can't play in time, you're not playing music. You're doing something else. I remember when I was at college, I was at the ACM. We had Eric Roach, who was a stunning acoustic guitar player. Absolutely stunning. Tragically, he passed away, I think maybe 20 years ago. I think it was like 2005 or 6. One of the lessons we had, I had him for theory and applied harmony. And he said the two most important factors in music, the two most important things, are playing in tune and playing in time. If you're not doing either of those things, you're not playing music. And that really stuck with me. And I always make sure that, first of all, students can tune their guitar. They come in, I'll turn the app on, but they're tuning the instrument. I'm making sure that they're downloading that app, so they have that app at home, so they can keep the guitar in tune when they're at home. And for me, like, playing in time, being able to just strum a G chord, tap your foot, keep everything in time, that is the most fundamental and basic lesson that I make sure that everybody can do. And I know it's not as glamorous as, tearing through certain songs and being able to play certain riffs and solos, but I just see it so frequently. I had a student come in here who was working on his rock school, I think it was grade 6 or grade 7. And I said, cool, great, that's amazing. Could you just play a G chord for me and keep it in time? And he just really struggled. And first of all, I don't know how he's managed to get through those rock school grades without being failed, because I don't know how you pass if you can't play a simple chord progression and keep it in time. Like, how do you not fail? And I don't know if it's they're not allowed to fail students. I think I saw somewhere that there was one of the grades that you can get. I don't know if this is rock school, or I don't know if it's some other board, but it's called a below pass. And I just thought, for fuck's sake, that is just so, what's the word we're looking for? Coddled? It's so softened. We're softening the language so much so that we can't call it a fail anymore. We're calling it a below pass grade. And now if that was my student, they'd come back in and they'd got a below pass, or they'd got a pass. Surely the teacher has written, this kid needs to work on their timing. Surely you'd be like, right, okay, we're just going to sit down with a click, and we're just going to do some basic chord work. So I think that's essential. That needs to be like hard focused on. And the other thing about making students go off and learn songs on their own, that is a skill in itself that needs to be worked on. And I think so much of music now is spoon fed to people. And I see it with guitar. I see it with piano as well. I see like YouTube videos or Instagram reels with stickers on piano keys, and they're writing numbers on it, like 1, 2, 4, 3, and that's the order that you play the keys. And it's like, well, that's not fucking music. Although it is, and it's But it's not. It's like painting by numbers. Like, it's great. You can play the thing, but can you do it without the stickers? Can you paint without the numbers? So, and I've mentioned before, chart reading and even sight reading, I think, are skills that need to be looked at. Maybe not sight reading in terms of like reading the dots, because that's not, I don't think that's as valuable as being able to read chord charts. But I'm also looking at things like transcribing as well. I think that's something else that isn't looked at often enough or hard enough. Because, like I said, everything is spoon-fed. The YouTube videos, the Instagram reels, the tabs that you're able to download for free. And I think like all of that is great. And I think that's a really great way of getting people kind of interested in music. But we do have to focus on those other things as well. Being able to just listen to a basic chord progression, just being able to figure that out by ear. We're not looking at, transcribing giant steps in all 12 keys. We're just, can you hear, or even just, can you hear a major and minor chord? Can you differentiate the different sounds? Can you hear the difference between major and minor? And that's not to say that if one of my students goes off and they're learning a song on their own and they come back in, they're like, yeah, I'm really struggling with this B flat chord. I'm not like, fuck you, man, you're on your own now. We're transcribing. We're working on ear training. So of course I'm going to sit down and be like, all right, this B flat's a tricky little chord. Here's a couple of ways that you can play it. They're not completely on their own. Of course I'm going to help them out. And I think that's the role I think that I like to play. Is I think it was Jordan Peterson. Love him or hate him, I think he's got some really great ideas, particularly with boys and men. And he said that when parents, if you imagine them holding their child so that they're face to face, like that's how mothers parent usually. But when dads do it, it's you're holding your child, but you turn the kid through 180 degrees. It's like, right, I've got you, but you're facing outwards. That's the world. So, and that's kind of what I like to do with my students. It's like, right, look, I'm always going to be here, but I'm going to try and put you in scenarios and situations where you're kind of on your own and you're going to kind of have to feel it out. Even if that's, try and figure out this chord progression, try and do it on your own. And rather than kind of, hold their hand through it, it's like, right, just see if you can do it on your own. Transcribe see if you can figure out this little lick. Go and do a gig. Go and play and perform to your parents when I'm not there, to kind of hold your hand through it and see how you get on, and report back, and we'll look at it and we can work on it. And I think that's the role of a good teacher. I think there should always be this element of letting go and sort of having people kind of do it on their own. Now, the question is like, hopefully I've answered this, but why do I do this? And I mentioned that, I think learning songs is such a small part of being a musician. And that's another thing, is I try and have students think of themselves as musicians rather than as guitar players. Certainly the ones that have been around for a few years, always trying to think about, where do you fit in this song, in this arrangement? Where do you fit in this group or this performance that you're going to do? Are you largely there as a support for a singer or for a solo instrument? Or are you the solo instrument? Are you kind of taking center stage? Yeah, but just thinking where you sit musically as a guitar player, I think is always worth thinking about, and it's always worth encouraging students to think about as well. Why do this? Because I think it's woefully overlooked, and it's overlooked, but it's such an important and integral part of being a musician, being able to play in time, tuning your instrument, being able to listen, like listening as well. Listening is such a huge part of music that, again, it's just massively overlooked. And like listening to music just for the sake of listening to music. I always encourage my students to listen to stuff, particularly stuff that they've never heard of, particularly stuff that maybe they don't even like. They have such easy access to music, and so many students don't listen to music, and it's kind of sad and tragic, really. And if music students aren't listening to much music, what the hell are other people doing? You would think that people who play an instrument or want to play an instrument do so because they listen to so much music, and they were like, I just want to make the sounds that I can hear coming out of, out my headphones or out my speakers. But that just doesn't seem to be the case. Everyone's kind of a little indifferent. And these are music students. They're kind of indifferent, which is really kind of sad. Really sad. But that now seems to be part of my job, trying to get them to listen to music. So that's why I do it. That's why I'm, and I feel like I'm out here on my own. But if you are a teacher, please, I'd love to know if you do the same thing. If you're kind of taking a step back from teaching songs and you're just letting YouTube do that, or if you've got both feet planted in the, no, I just teach kids songs because it's the only way I can get them to I don't know, pay attention or keep coming back. Maybe the parents, maybe that's an interesting, because I remember I did have a parent email me, and she emailed me saying, what songs are we learning? What songs is he learning? And I said, we're not really learning any songs at the moment. He's kind of doing that on his own. I'm focusing more on, all the things I talked about: timing, rhythm, groove, feel. And she was kind of insistent that, that she wants him to learn songs. They had, I'm sure it was the New Year, because maybe it was just after Christmas, and they wanted him to play and perform some songs at Christmas time. And she said that he didn't know any songs. I was like, well, that's complete horseshit. I didn't say that, but it is complete horseshit. His book is filled with, 5 or 6 to 10 songs that we've done in the last 3 or 4 months. But we've now moved into this area where he can kind of learn songs on his own. And I'm encouraging him to do that. And these are the things that we're working on. And she said, no, I want him to learn some songs. So, at the end of the day, the parents are paying the fee. It's like I've said, it is just one part of being a musician, and learning to play a song along to a record. That's how I learned. I learned songs. I put on, Oasis records, Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Green Day. I'd put that on and I would play through the album start to finish. And I think the difference is I didn't have a big issue with playing in time and rhythm and groove and feel. And I think that's down to because I just listened to so much fucking music. Even when I was young, even when I was 4 or 5, I remember, maybe not 4 or 5, maybe a little older, 7 or 8. I remember just putting the radio on and falling asleep to the radio, or putting a tape on and falling asleep to a tape. So that was kind of like my musical lessons, first music lessons, but just falling asleep to music. And I'd always be tapping my foot, nodding my head to these records. So I'd never really struggled with rhythm and timing and strumming. But yeah, I think maybe that's why I have to focus in on it, because people aren't listening. That is, yeah, I think that's the case. I think I'm kind of rambling now. Hopefully I've sold you on the idea. If you are a teacher, I think we need to spend a bit more time making sure that our students can tune their guitar. They can play in time, they can strum a G chord and make it sound musical as well. That's another thing. Is like, does it sound musical? Are they just cracking the shit out of the strings so they're trying to break the fucking things? That's another thing that I look at. Like, don't hold the pick too hard. Try and adjust how you hold the pick. Try and be a little lighter. And that's the goal. I always set out, like, in the back of my mind, I have this question, like, would I have this student depth for me on a gig? Even if it's just a basic, accompanying a singer, cowboy chords, can they do that? Would I put that student onto that gig? That's kind of at the back of my mind, the back of my mind. And when you have that distant goal, that really kind of I start to focus on making sure that those little things, like, does it sound musical? Are they playing it in a way that sounds nice, rather than, okay, he can play the G chord, he's moving to the C chord in time, he's tapping his foot, but does it sound musical? Let's work on that as well. Let's just adjust how they're holding the pick. Let's look at how the hand is actually hitting the strings. Is it nice and loose and relaxed? Or is it tense? Is he squeezing the pick and he's getting that really harsh, brash kind of sound out of the guitar? So that's it. I hope I've sold you on the idea that we should maybe spend a little less time looking at songs and maybe a bit more time on everything else, because those other things are just as important. And it does seem to me that those skills as well just aren't being taught in music schools, at least not to the degree that they were when I was there 22 years ago, which makes me feel really fucking old. But here we go. That was the first episode with just me. Thank you so much. And we just wrapped up the end of the year, the Spotify Wrapped, and I did get a piece of one of the stats came through that there was about 200 of you who had this podcast in your top. I think it was your top 5 podcast. I know I never say this when I'm doing the interviews and I'm talking to people, but I do thank you, every single one of you who listens, who tunes in. Thank you. It's been a really, really, really amazing journey these last, I think it's 2 years now. Fucking hell. And I've spoken to some incredible people, and I've got some really amazing people lined up for next year that I've been talking to over the last couple of months. Yes, so long may it continue. Thank you for your support. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the comments. I don't get that many comments from people who do enjoy the show, you do want to reach out, you can always find me on Instagram. That's probably the best place to get me, which is Tim Love Guitar, all one word, on Instagram. So thank you very much. And yeah, we'll do another one. I've kind of enjoyed the rambling. I'll edit some of the fuck ups out, and we will be back next week. So thank you.